This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Not a lot, man. How you doing?
Pretty good, man. Before we get, I like to get straight into it. This is like half team meeting, half podcast, but letting all the listeners know what we're doing today. We will update you on our training, what we're doing, maybe some shout outs to the current cycle going on. But then we're getting into a really cool study. The title of the study is Outrunning the Grim Reaper, Longevity of the First 200 Sub 4-Minute Mile Male Runners. So they are taking a look at all these runners who have achieved the feat of going sub 4 in the mile and then looking at their longevity. And there are a lot of cool things in this study, a lot of takeaways. I thought that just the study in general, like who even thought of that, is very interesting. But we're gonna be talking about that today and kind of our thoughts on it as well. You know, step aside from the science and hey, what's the coach's opinion here? So stick around if you want to hear more about that. But first, we're gonna talk about ourselves. Joe, how's training?
So I've actually made some pretty good updates, pretty good changes to my routine recently because I just felt like I needed to switch things up. And every once in a while, I kind of do this. I know you've done it probably, I don't know, once a year or something. How often would you say you change up your routine workout wise?
You mean like the actual training or like the actual routine of the day?
Like routine of the day, like timing or, just order of operations.
Yeah, I mean, so I exercise mornings right now in the summer, and people were like, "Oh, because it's hot." Not really because it's hot. It's just because my kids are home and I don't have to take them to school. And so I work out in the mornings. And I mean, I prefer it, but to be able, my kids, this can be a much more of an answer than you wanted. But because they're in elementary school, like we had to be out the door by I think it was like 6:45. So I was trying to fit workouts before, but I would have to start like early 5s to realistically make that work and then still get them up and feed them and do all those things. And Emily helps as well. But when you have 3 kids, it's kind of like everyone needs to help. So anyway, I switch it up for the summer. I go to mornings, and then once school is back in session, I pretty much go back to afternoon workouts. So I guess 2-3 times a year I make that switch.
Yeah. I probably stick one way for almost a year. Maybe I'll change it once during the year, but I changed mine up now. I don't really have, I pretty much slow roll the day I don't need to, or at least I was for a while. Cause right now here, I don't take Landon to daycare. I did in Monterey, but it was early enough. It was just like a 10-minute walk. So anyway, I'm working out very first thing in the morning, which is still like 8 o'clock, 7:45, because it's like right when Liz and Landon leave, I get them out in the car and then I go work out. But I'll have electrolytes first thing, and that's about it. I was starting to do some work and eating breakfast, and I feel like that was just making me procrastinate my workout more and more. It's like, oh, I gotta digest my food. Like, oh, well, I got this work to do, and then 2 or 3 hours later, I'm like, crap. Well, now I don't feel like working out because I just did all this other stuff, and I kind of want to get throughout the rest of my day. So I scrap that working out first thing. I only eat if I'm actually going to do something intense, and it may only be like half of an RX bar or something, just enough just to give me a little, but I don't. So I'm eating as little as possible before workouts, but usually it's like a liquid IV. And I even got this pre-workout beet supplement to put in my electrolytes, and that's all I've been having before it. And it's worked out well so far. I mean, I've done some pretty hard workouts. I did one yesterday, which I'll get into in a little bit. And yeah, it's always a good change. I did this again a couple of years ago when I just was having a hard time starting my workouts. That was like really the big thing, was just unmotivated. So I just really needed to start right away before I had anything in between or anything to procrastinate.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, dude, morning workouts are where it's at. And I always have this like idea that I'm going to keep up with them even when school starts. It happens to me every year. Like they start back in August. I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep doing it. And then I might keep morning workouts from like until October. And then it just gets harder and harder to like maintain going to bed when I need to go to bed and then still wake up at like 4:45 to be exercising by the early fives. It just with their schedule right now, but I've tried doing what you're talking about, like just wake up, do the kids stuff, and then get to like work out before you start work because it's all the same, right? Like if I'm going to work out kind of in my work day already, or like at
Hmm.
the end of my work day, like why not just work at the beginning and work a little bit longer? And I don't know, it screws my head. Like if I don't start working until like 9 a.m., I feel like I'm so far behind. I'm like, and it's not even true. It's just like a subconscious thing. I'm like, gosh, I've wasted so much time already. It's very difficult for me. It's a mental thing.
I guess that makes sense. I think I have a harder time starting the workout sometimes, whereas you might just find that as like, all right, great, break time, time to go do some fitness.
Well, you know what happens when it's a morning workout is I never skip it. Like getting
Yeah,
7 days a week is easy because it's the first thing. That's why I say morning workouts are the best because all sorts of things can happen in the afternoon. Like something can pop up, kid gets sick, you got to go pick them up, or like Emily has something going on with her projects and like just something. Or like you're talking about food that used to happen to me all the time. I wouldn't eat all day, and then it'd be like, oh crap, I should eat. Then I eat a big meal at like 2, and then I work out at 3, and I'm like, oh no, I can't.
yeah,
Like and I would still do something, but then I'd be like, I would have an excuse to not go as intense or like whatever. So work out early. It's just that's the way life should be.
yeah. It's so that's good. That's what's happening. And I did a mock High Rocks event workout
Dude, I
because we
saw
were
you
talking
post
about
it
that.
on the Insta. How was it?
It was good until the wall balls, and that just freaking murdered me. But maybe just because of like, so the High Rocks is an event that you do. It's like 10 rounds, or really, it's like 10 fitness elements, and in between all of those 10 things, you run 1K, a thousand meters, and each of the elements are different. It's like there's like a ski erg, row, sled push, sled drag, burpee, broad jumps, lunges, wall balls, that kind of stuff. So I picked 3 things and I bookended the run. So I did 4 runs and 3 events. I did rowing, 1,000 meters. I did 4 minutes on the air dyne because I don't have, it was like just one of the few things that I could do, but it was still tax the legs kind of things. Got through those just fine. Got to the third run, still doing good. But then wall balls, man, that was just like a much higher intensity like output. Like the other ones, you can kind of just set a pace and just stick to that pace, even if it is hard, especially transitioning from one to the next. But yeah, that was rough. So I think in the event largely like the wall balls and the sled push, maybe even the burpee broad jumps would be like the really hard parts.
How many wall balls was it again?
100.
100.
Yeah, 100. I think I did a heavier weight than what the open division would do, but still.
Yeah, my wall ball is 30 pounds because you bought it for me, and that's the only one I have. So every time I do wall balls, I don't even know what a 20-pound wall ball is like. Like I always just do 30-pound wall ball shots. Like that's just how it. And
I think
I'm
I
just
got
used.
that for you because I knew you didn't have a 30. I didn't know you didn't have a 20. And I
Yeah, I
figured
don't have
maybe you'll
any.
get
I
a
just
20
do my.
someday. That was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's my wall ball. Oh, I did have a 20-pound like basketball, the DIY one.
Oh, yeah.
That broke eventually, so I just
Yeah.
never had a 20-pound one, and I've just had that 30-pound forever. Dude, a good training for wall ball
Hmm.
is the wall ball with a squat in between it. Whatever that's called, the 2 for
Oh,
1. So like
I don't know.
you shoot it up to the spot, then you squat down, stand up, catch it.
Yeah.
Like if you can knock some of those out, you'll be ready, man. You'll be ready for that. Any kind of amount of wall balls they throw at you
I think
come.
I just need to actually do them. It's probably been, I don't know, year, 2 years since I've done a wall ball.
Yeah.
Maybe even 3 years.
I don't know if I told the story. This was only like had it been like 6 months ago or something like that, but I was doing them at my last house. My last house was awful for a few things. One, handstand push-ups. I can do a handstand push-up anywhere. Like it just people were like, "How is that possible?" Like there was no wall. There was like
Yeah.
nowhere I could legitimately do a handstand push-up. It was really frustrating. But then also wall balls. There was not a good place to like hit the wall at the right mark, because the only place was in front of my garage, like big garage door, like where the garage door opens. There was space in front of it, but I had to stand on a slant, almost like a 45-degree angle, because it
Mm.
like came out to be able to do them. And so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do them. I just like, I don't know if it was programmed or whatever. Like sometimes when it's programmed, I would do something else. But then I was doing them, and it hit, but it hit oddly, and it kind of was like dragging down the wall. But then it hit the trim at the top of the garage, and I'm like ready for it, but it hits that lip and pops off, nails me right in the face, dude. 30 pounds falling from 10 feet right in the face. I mean, felt like I had been
Whiplash.
punched. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I had a concussion, because it took me out, man. I was like, uh, I was fine ultimately. I don't think I had a concussion, but that was a bad
Yeah,
one.
that'd be rough.
I
Still,
thought I
like,
broke my nose, but I don't think I did.
yeah, that's nice. Just punch in the face. Actually, punch in the face while doing wall balls.
Yeah, and then you had to finish the workout. Like that was tough.
Yeah.
Um, so my only update is I'm running again. I don't know why. I just kind of started happening. I took the I like stopped running. I was so done with running post ultra marathon training, and now I'm just like almost on that 7 day a week schedule again. And I'm like, well, what are you gonna do? Like, you only have 4 program days anyway, like on the hard to kill track. Why not run the like other 3 days? So I've just been running. I do like an interval day, which was on the hard to kill track previously, but then I'm adding like some zone 2 runs. And it is more enjoyable because I don't what I started to hate about ultra marathon training was knowing when you go to train that you're going to be on the road for like 2 hours or something. Like that,
Mhm.
it just anything over 10 miles was stupid to me. And now, if I don't go over 5 or 6 on like a long run, that's perfectly comfortable. Anything above 6, not really interested. And to be honest, it's like 3 to 5 is the sweet spot for me. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's 3 to 5 miles worth of intervals, 3 to 5 miles worth of zone 2. That's such a sweet spot for feeling like I did something, like, getting in the activity, feeling good, not being exhausted the rest of the day, all those kind of things. So I'm running again. No plans to utilize that, but yeah, just just started again.
That's good. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that sweet spot. I think, um, like it seems like the first mile and a half, I'm like, oh man, this sucks. This is gonna take me a while. And then after 2 to 3, it's like, okay, I'm in a good groove. And then 4 to 5, I'm like, all right, I'm about good. I'm about ready to be done. And there's some days where I'm just like, I'm still going strong at 5, but then if the times that I pushed to 10K, I'm like, all right, that's my cap. I think is 10K.
Yeah, same, about there. All right, cool. Well, let's get into this study. Again, I kind of want to talk like broader overview of this because we've covered something similar. Um, so the study we covered on the podcast before, it's not exactly like this, but I just want to kind of make sure people understand like what we're looking at, why we're talking about it. And the original study we covered was the Goldilocks zone for exercise, not too little, not too much. And that was done in 2018. I think we covered it maybe shortly after it came out. I feel like we may have covered it a second time as well. But here's a little excerpt from that study. It said the optimal dose, or what we term Goldilocks zone, of physical exercise may be at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise or 75 minutes per week of vigorous intensity aerobic activity, but no more than 4 to 5 cumulative hours per week of vigorous, heart pounding, sweat producing exercise, especially for those over 45 years of age. Okay, so what this study looked at, again, I'm talking about the Goldilocks zone, not the new study we're covering today, is this reverse J shaped curve. And this has to do with coronary heart disease, is what they're looking at. So when I say reverse J shaped curve, think about a J backwards. At the top is people who rarely never exercise. They have the most coronary heart disease events. And then it goes down when you go down to like, oh, I exercise once per week, 2 to 3 times per week, 4 to 6 times per week. It starts to go down. That's starting to shape the J. But then when you go up to 7 times a week, like all the kind of things, like, or really it's amount of time. Like people are spending, instead of 4 to 5 hours, they're spending 15, 20 hours a week training. It starts to go back up. And that's how we get this reverse J. And so when you are exercising too much, at least in this study, that starts to tick up for coronary heart disease events. And so it's very interesting. And what that study is kind of saying is like, hey, there's a sweet spot, a Goldilocks zone for exercise. And if you do too little, your risk of death increases, or coronary heart disease event, or like whatever. And then as you exercise too much, the same thing can happen. Obviously, it's not going to be as bad as like a sedentary person, but it starts to tick up more than kind of the people in that sweet zone, sweet spot. And so this study was kind of trying to challenge that notion. So again, the title of the study we're covering today is called "Outrunning the Grim Reaper: Longevity of the First 200 Sub 4-Minute Mile Male Runners." And what they were looking at, I'll read their objective, and it was to determine the impact of running a sub 4-minute mile on longevity. It was hypothesized that there would be an increase on longevity for runners who successfully completed a sub 4-minute mile compared with the general population. Um, it's just so interesting. So it compared the lifespans of the first 200 male runners who achieved the milestone with general population's life expectancy. So not them compared to one another, but compared to Gen Pop. And let's see, this study was published in May, and the data collection analysis covered lifespans of runners from 1954 to 2023. They pulled it from a bunch of different places. Anyway, let's hop to what's interesting. So they found that sub 4-minute mile runners lived an average of 4.7 years longer than their predicted life expectancy. And then here's one of the things I found most interesting is that the longevity benefit varied by decade. So runners from the 1950s living an average of 9.2 years longer than expected. Those from the 1960s living 5.5 years longer, and those from the 1970s living 2.9 years longer. Now, obviously, there's a lot to unpack with that, and I couldn't get it from the study. But obviously, if you're born in the 70s or 60s, the chances of you still being alive are pretty good, right? And in the 50s, I'd say that's still pretty decent chance. You know what I mean? It's not like um, people should be dying off at these age groups, but they are looking at people who have passed away. So it's, if they were born in the 50s, they got over 9 years of extra life. And then 60s, 5.5, 70s, 2.9. It's weird. Obviously, these people had to have um, been compared to like the general population. And I guess we'd have to wait another decade or two to see if, like, hey, is the average really 4.7, or is the average more closer to like what the 1950s decade looked like, where it's like 9 years greater? And I'm sure not all those people, because I don't think you have to die here, right? Like I didn't read that in study, but like if your predicted life expectancy was 76 and you are now 86, that's 10 years longer. Like you don't have to die for this study. It's just like what's past the predicted age. So anyway, but a lot of people had died. They did not look into cause of death, which I think they should have. So anyway, we can talk about a lot of these other things, but what did you think about the study or find interesting?
I think it's a really interesting idea. It's really cool, especially because it's so easy to do. All you have to do is basically just look at a bunch of records of like, okay, where are these people at now from the first 200? I think that it'd be great to keep growing on it. And I guess I don't know if I have almost the opposite thoughts of when the different decades of that. It gets the gap between the, I guess, normal people. I guess they just put it to everybody's mortality to the ones that ran a sub 4 is shrinking per decade. And I wonder if it's, I mean, it could be because like we just haven't gotten to where those people are a certain age yet, or recreational fitness, I feel like is more and more of a thing now than it was in the 50s. So like per decade, I feel like more people are being at least recreationally fit versus back then it's like if you are a runner, you're running to compete, but you don't just run to run.
Yeah, and that's why I said there's a lot to unpack there. So I started with the, hey, maybe these people are just still alive, but you're 100% right. Is like maybe we're just closing the gap, but you're looking at it through a more positive lens. Um, I don't think that we're getting healthier per decade. Like in all honesty, I think things are just getting worse for those who for people in the world in general, as far as it comes to like exercise and stuff. So what also could be happening and what could be a big difference here is the difference in like we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like the difference between lifespan and health span, right? Just because two people make it to 80 years old and then die at the same time doesn't really matter, right? Because what if one guy was like exercising every day, had an awesome like quality of life, could take care of himself, live by himself, like, all these kind of things, and then just like died all of a sudden one day when he was 80 years old, but like could walk, do all the things. That's an amazing health span, right? With an 80-year lifespan. But there are some people who their health takes a significant turn for the worse around 60, but our medical system keeps them alive through different surgeries and medications and nursing homes and
Hmm.
stuff. And then they eventually die at 80, but their last 20 years were absolute crap.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I don't know how they could have necessarily done that. They would have had to have like lifespan data and health span data. How do you truly measure health span? But anyway, I do think that that's another factor is like our medical system might be improving so much that this gap is shrinking. And so if that gap's shrinking, I don't really care. I'd like to know what the health span difference was of a 4 minute, sub 4 minute mile runner versus somebody who made it to the same age but never really exercised that much.
Yeah, I definitely would like to get some more specifics as well. Like I had ideas of, okay, the sub 4 minute mile. They said there was only like 2,000 people that have done it ever, or something like that. Like really small number in the
And I don't
world.
think any, let me see this. I don't believe any females had done it.
No, zero.
This was that like ever, right? Like it's never
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
to me,
that's
that's
why.
like a crazy marker or bar to set, and it's also just like any time in their life. But I'm curious as like, okay, what about like a 6 minute mile, but after age 25? Like that shows that because like if you're in your teens, that's when a lot of the elite runners around 20 happens. But after 25, 30 years old, for people to keep performance up, now, what's their mortality look like when they're much older versus, if you are in your early 20s, you hit a record and then you just fall off a cliff and, become sedentary. So that's another way I think I'd like to look at because that would be, for sure. I think it would tell somewhat of a different story and would definitely give a nod toward much more training and some of the things we've looked at in the past.
Yeah, because that's here's one thing they said from the study, and I'm going to come back to what you said. It said regular moderate exercise is considered a pillar of healthy aging. However, there are concerns that exposing the body to extreme exercise bouts may be harmful to longevity. And I get what they were trying to do, and it's interesting. But my biggest criticism is kind of what you're saying is like, okay, let's say I run a sub 4 minute mile. I'm 22 years old, and now I'm 45 years old. I'm not still running a sub 4 minute mile,
Hmm.
like, so why does it matter? Like, are they saying that this extreme level of fitness early on in life can be a protector or maybe even just help you build the correct habits, mentality, ideas about nutrition and training? Maybe that can play a role in you living a longer life because that's what it's ultimately going to be, right? These guys weren't running this fast their whole life, but maybe it's that extreme amount of training is protective benefit later on, either through building up healthy habits or whatever. And then also they mentioned in the study, like another thing that they could be like not accounting for is just straight up genetics. You know what I mean? Like I might not ever like take me back in time to when I'm 16 years old and you're like, hey, you have to train to run a sub 4 minute mile. That's your life's goal. Might not happen. Might not ever happen. Like
Hmm.
maybe I get to 4:30 and that's the best I could ever do in my whole life. So there's something genetically different about these people from a performance basis too. And that could be their protective benefit that's keeping them alive from the 50s decade generation up to 9 years longer. So there's just a lot of like factors that we're not sure of here. I don't think that this completely refutes the Goldilocks study. Like I think,
Hmm.
and to be honest, the Goldilocks study is way larger, and I think that it's still that reverse J-shaped curve is something everyone should be paying attention to when they're setting their goals and thinking about how much they want to train uh, day to day, week to week.
Yeah, I definitely like that one because of that. And if they wanted to do more, like you'd have to, instead of that sort of somewhat arbitrary, elite marker, it would be the health sort of Goldilocks zone trainers. And then I think when they put into elite, it's whatever those minutes are, it's almost double what would be people in an elite category, and then compare those two over decades or later on in life. Like, okay, when you're in, how long you train for this elite in this elite zone, the college athletes that maybe even go pro or something like that, even through college, you figure you're 22, 23 in that elite training zone for a while. And then, a lot of people just fall off after that. I don't know if this
Oh
four
yeah,
minute marker,
100%.
yeah, I don't know if this 4 minute marker was like, oh, they made these records, did this awesome thing. So they stayed active longer. But I feel like I've heard a lot of cases and just knowing people just that were at this elite level, they just kind of fall off and be like, you know what? I did my time. I'll do a little bit here and there, but I'm not going out there and trying anymore because I did that. That was my life before and it's not anymore.
Yeah, dude. 100%. I actually feel like I see that more often than the reverse. As people who pushed it really hard, like I have friends who played really high level collegiate sports. I know Navy SEALs, operators, and other branches of the military, professional athletes, even. And once they're done with that thing, they are kind of done. Like they balloon up, they gain a ton of weight, they don't exercise like they used to, mainly because they're not forced to or their job not is not required anymore. And they end up with health problems anyway, and they end up, like I said, overweight and out of shape. And like I said, I feel like I see that more often, and it's because at some point they're just I just can't push it to that level anymore. They've been doing it for a decade and a half, sometimes 2 decades, 3 decades, depending on their career, and then they're just like, I'm done with this, and then they don't ever like a lot of. I'm sure you've heard it before. Like guys get out of the military and they're like, I'm never running again. Like I'll never run
Yeah.
again a day in my life. Like I've seen that be true, and I'm like, well, see how that works out for you, and it's normally not good. Now that's not the I'm not saying that's the majority. I just think that that happens quite often. I've seen that a lot. There are also a lot of people who finish collegiate sports or high level military training and they have those good habits for the rest of their life. So I've definitely seen both. But yeah, it could go either way with these sub 4 minute mile runners. They could be like, yeah, I'm just going to be healthy and fit for the rest of my life, or they can be like, screw that. That was hard. I want to chill. I want to walk for fitness. So
Yeah.
so I'll just kind of get into like, okay, we talked a lot about pros and cons of this study and everything, but let's just talk about takeaways for this. So, one, we're talking about the Goldilocks zone. You want to exercise 4 to 5 hours per week. That's kind of like the safety zone for at least coronary heart disease. And I would say that's a major factor. So staying healthy there, that's what you want according to the Goldilocks zone. But what I would say this study helps reveal is that it is okay to push it outside that window if you want to. Like if you want to go uh, train harder, train more for a specific event or something like that, go do that thing and just know that you're going to be fine. It's not going to be dangerous. Like if anyone listens to the Goldilocks zone study or reads it and they walk out with fear about like not being able to train or something, that's the opposite of what that should do for you. So I think the biggest takeaway here is you can train hard, you can train for something, you can train a lot, but then you ultimately need to find this balance that's going to work for you for the rest of your life. And then my last takeaway for this is just your habits. I think the habits are everything. I wish we could get down to like each individual person, have conversations with them, because I guarantee what really happened is, to your point, Joe, these people were exercising at a very early age to be able to achieve this feat of a sub 4 minute mile at a very early age. And what does that do? It gives you discipline. It changes your mindset. It changes your nutritional habits. It changes your habits in general, your daily lifestyle habits. It changes everything. It changes who you are at such an early age that it's almost ingrained into your DNA at that point. It's who you have become. You're not some 40-year-old trying to change bad habits. You're a 15-year-old who's been training his whole life and has nothing but good habits. And then you achieve this sub 4 minute mile, late teens, early 20s, and then the rest of your life is just gravy. You're just maintaining the things that you have always done, the things that you started from a very early age. So ultimately, your habits are everything is my takeaway. And that's not exactly what the study is saying. They're trying to challenge more that Goldilocks zone. I don't think that's what this study does at all. But what I think it really proves is that, hey, if you can be healthy and maintain good habits for a lifetime, it's going to pay off in a major way.
Also, doing something that like any sort of huge goal, it's going to take time and habits and dedication anyway. So like it that that sort of high reaching goal may have a lasting impact even after you achieve it.
Yeah. Awesome. You got anything else, Joe?
Nope.
All
Good.
right, cool. Well, we can end this one here. We're right at the start of a new cycle. So if you're interested in being a part of that, go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial. We would love to have you in the program. And then, for all of our athletes, knocking it out, the training, staying consistent, being in that Goldilocks zone that we program on all of our tracks. We really appreciate each and every single one of you. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.